On episode 340 of the Tennis Files podcast, you'll learn 7 doubles tells that will win you more matches. Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the show. Today's episode is inspired by a recent doubles practice session that I had. It was effectively a mixed tenno practice. It was me, my friend Subodh, and then my other 2 friends, Kate and Rita. Actually, I'm not a 5-0 anymore. I was going to say we're all 5-0s, but I was bumped down. So, yeah, the others are 5-0s, and we had a really nice practice. And we were chatting afterwards because Subodh was a bit surprised at me reading some of his serves. And so I got to thinking to do an episode on doubles tells. So shout out Subodh. Yeah, I really enjoyed playing with all those 3 players. And yeah, let's just jump right into it because I know you just want the tips. So the first one is to recognize the signals between the server and the net partner. So obviously, you know, there are probably lower level matches where there's no signals or anything used, but you really want to pay attention to the signals if they're used between your opponents when the net player gives the signals to, you know, serve on what location, as well as to poach or to go. Because from my experience, for example, I have noticed that the net partner, you know, signals, you know, gives the first signal off, and then the server says yes over and over again, and they're just serving it to my backhand, right? So in that case, you can deduce that if there's an instance where the net player gives a signal and the server says no, and then the net player gives the second signal and the server says yes, that's usually going to go to the forehand. So in that case, a lot of times I can tell, all right, you know, it's probably going to go to the forehand, you know, so hopefully, you know, I'll guess correctly, and then I'll be in position plenty of time to hit a very good forehand return. And so that's what I did against Subodh a couple times. And to kind of layer into that type of thinking, usually the pattern of the calls, again, from what I've seen, is the first call is a backhand. The second call is a forehand or out wide. And again, sorry, this is mainly applying to, you know, righties, so you just reverse it if you're playing lefties. So again, first call backhand, second call wide, and third call down the line. So I personally think of, you know, what location do I prefer, or does my server partner prefer, and call that first. But especially when you kind of know what your opponents are thinking, maybe they know, like this is my case, right? Like that my forehand is a big weapon, you know, significantly stronger struck shot than my backhand. So they're usually going to serve to my backhand. It's a very smart play. So whenever they're calling no on the first one, I know that it's probably wide, maybe body, but usually, again, the pattern is backhand, wide, body. So, yeah, told my buddy Subodh about that. I kind of debated, to be honest. I just want to keep reading those and cracking them. But yeah, and the second tell is kind of related. If you hear a different sort of reply from the server when the net partner gives them a signal, that can oftentimes mean a break in the pattern. So I noticed this too when I was playing with Subodh. I can't remember the exact different response that he gave, but it was a different intonation. Like, you know, he would, for example, say, yeah, you know, just the same yeah over and over again. But then the one response he gave was like, all right, or something like that, you know? So that tipped me off that there was a change in pattern, whether that was, you know, a direction that the net player was moving for an I formation, or, you know, a serve location. So those sorts of things, you know, it really pays to be perceptive. A lot of people don't think about that. They're too swept up in what they're going to do. And obviously you do want to think about like, okay, what are you going to do? But sometimes people just get too into what's going on and they're too tense or nervous. And, I just find that in general, just thinking about these things gives me confidence. It's fun. It makes you think more about executing and anticipating when you can try to make these reads instead of not doing them and just not really being into the match or, not using your brain. So I really enjoy this personally. And I don't know, it might come from me playing a lot of poker. I don't know if, many of you remember me just creating an episode about parallels between poker and tennis based off of a trip to Vegas playing at the World Series of Poker. But yeah, making reads is really important. And my buddy Will Hamilton from Fuzziola Balls, he has likened, tennis strategy to poker in the sense of making reads as well. So yeah, it's definitely an enjoyable area and, makes you use your brain. So you should do it. Tip number 3, the third tell, if your server partner is able to serve down the tee, especially if it's a first serve, but even if it's a second serve, if it's strong, highly recommend that you poach on this, because as I was just reviewing a video with Craig O'Shaughnessy and Will it was like a double strategy, playbook essentially. And Craig was saying that when a serve down the tee is hit, usually, if the ball is going down the middle like that in the middle area of the court to the returner, the return is usually going to go down the middle or across court. So in that case, you really do want to poach. And it's also pretty hard for a player to hit, a serve down the tee backhand, again, assuming righty, back down the line such that they, are able to hit it in the alley, especially. It's just a tough shot to pull back across. And I also find just in general, it really pays off to be aggressive in doubles. Also, with the backhand return is not going to be as strongly struck for the most part as well. And, people are not going to try to hit a lower percentage shot down the line. And a lot of people are just scared in general to hit down the line. They want to play it safer. Also, another advantage is, again, if you're a righty and you're poaching from the deuce side to the ad side, you're going to have a forehand volley, which is most players' stronger side to volley. On top of that, if you call the poach in advance, the server, your partner, is going to have to, switch sides, so they'll be able to cover you in case the returner goes down the line. So a lot of great pros to poaching on the deuce side tee serve. A few days ago at practice, I was poaching over 50% of the time with great success. As Borat would say, great success. Very nice. But I've been increasing my rate of poaching, and it's really paying off a lot. I'm just getting a lot more volleys, off the first, off the return, and making life easier for my serving partner. Also, it's caused players to then go down the line later, and then by that point, sometimes I'm calling the fake poach so that they go down the line, and when they know you're moving, then you're causing them to hit more errors. So, yeah, I know this is about tells, but just in general, just poaching is really highly valuable. I also do like to poach on that side quite a bit, as long as, my partner can hit a body serve or down the tee. But yeah, so a lot of reasons to poach on this deuce side tee serve. The fourth tell is interesting one, but it's the backhand slice. So when you see somebody going for a backhand slice, you want to time it, of course. Don't leave too early because they can hold it to some extent, but they're usually going to hit a slice cross court. And I guess, this can apply to the forehand too, obviously, but with the backhand slice, it's generally going to be going slower. It's going to be floating a lot of the time. And this is a prime time, so to speak, to poach. So I do this quite a bit, just works out a lot. And, a reverse or an exploit of this that I do as well is if I'm playing smart doubles players who recognize that when you see somebody prepare to hit a slice, you should poach, then I actually hit my backhand slice down the line. So I do catch quite a few good players by hitting down the line when I prepare a backhand slice. So that's something you want to think about as well. So kind of reading what types of players you're playing and to adjust accordingly. But again, I love that poach off of the backhand slice. And then tell number 5 is that if a player is leaning back off a deep ground stroke, I highly recommend that you poach as well, because when a player is leaning back or facing a tough, deep shot, your partner, or you obviously, they will often prioritize getting the ball back in play, which in other words means, just getting cross court, getting the ball back to the baseline player to reset the point. And so, of course, accordingly, they're not going to be able to hit as aggressive or as high-paced of a shot. And they generally don't consider going down the line. So a lot of great reasons here for you to try and pick off that ball. And, a lot of times when I played the number one line at 5-0 or, 9-5 men's combo, for example, that happened to me a lot of pressure being put, when the other player hit a really good shot and I'm just trying to, concentrate on the ball that's about to hit the baseline and get the ball back, the other player is moving. But there is an exploit there where if you do have, good control over the shot and the player is going to poach, you can go down the line. I do this a lot, especially when I don't necessarily face like a super deep shot, but a deep shot where I have to lean back. What I do is I'm able to kind of hit a sort of buggy whip, like a Nadal type forehand. And I do love that shot actually, because when I'm leaning back, a lot of these, higher level doubles players are going to move and they're salivating and thinking of, oh, yum, yum. I'm going to have this, this shot that's sitting up with this guy who hits a lot of spin. But, I lean back and then I actually buggy whip the ball down the line. And my shot doesn't have to be anywhere near perfect. It's just, on the half of the net player who had just left and vacated their space. And, the baseline player is not able to cover that generally, like 90% of the time. So that works out really well as an exploit. But again, you might not be seeing this, type of player on the other side of the net at 3-0, 3-5, stuff like that. But it is something to think about. And the strategy / tell does hold, when you are facing or looking at a player who's going to struggle with a ground stroke that's deep and, they're leaning back probably, then you do want to look to pick off the shot that's going to be weaker. Number 6 is serve positioning. So generally speaking, and I have caveats that I'll mention soon, but usually when a player is standing wide, very wide especially, it means they're going to serve wide. So whether that's, a slice serve or a kick serve on the ad side for righties and the opposite for lefties. And then conversely, if they stand close to the tee, that means they usually are going to serve down the tee. However, this does not apply if the player always stands in the one position every time. So if they're always standing wide or always standing down the tee, I mean, obviously it's a bit harder for them serving, like for example, standing super wide to hit a serve down the tee. And, you do encounter these players who are used to singles or they don't think about their positioning and they are always standing at the tee to serve. So they're just, not quite adjusting to doubles. But, generally speaking, that's the case. I've played players who, they don't either they don't care or they don't think about it. But when they want to serve wide, they stand wide. When they want to serve down the tee, they stand down right by the tee. So, you do have to know your opponents, though, because I have played players who they will try to trick you. They'll stand out wide and actually blast the serve down the tee, and you're wondering what's going on. But, you learn. So you get a little more cognizant of when this might happen based on the opponent. But yeah, serve positioning is another thing you want to pay attention to as well. Tell number 7. We're already at number 7 is the I formation tell. So this one is a bit more niche, but if you're playing pair where the server has a preferred ground stroke, you can bet that the vast majority of the time with the I formation, the net player is going to move to the side that covers the server's weaker ground stroke. So let's say that, John is the server and Bill is the net player, and John has a great forehand. John is serving on the deuce side, and you have, did I say Bill? His net partner, Bill, is kneeling down in the I formation. Then most likely John is going to tell Bill to go back left so that John has a forehand. So that's usually what's going to happen. It's just how it is. It would be stupid for the server to, have the net player go to the side of his strength and then have to hit a weaker shot. So yeah, but I think it is smart to once in a while, if you know that the opposing team knows that, then it's smart for you to then switch it up and sacrifice, having to hit your weaker side. You can always neutralize, hit a lob or just, hit a decent enough ground stroke. But yeah, that's again kind of a more niche tell if you play players who do the I formation. And yeah, so that is the 7th tell. I'll just give you, a bonus tell where I do highly recommend that you pay attention to tosses, because a lot of players will try to obviously toss the ball to make them be able to hit certain serves more optimally. So obviously, if you see the toss to the left for a righty, they're probably going to try to hit a top spin or kick serve. So you'll be able to tell where the location is, where the serve is going. And then conversely, of course, more of a 1 to 2 o'clock toss for righties will indicate a slice serve is probably coming. So yeah, you just want to really pay attention to all these things. And, my ending message of all this from what I've experienced, in doubles and very recently is it really, again, as I talked about a bit earlier, is it's really, really pays to be more aggressive. It's fun. You create more uncertainty for your opponents. You get to volley more. You get to hit more put-away volleys or volleys at the opposing net player where the height of the ball is such that it's nice and comfortable usually. And it just helps you win more points and shortens points. So I've just found that as I become a better doubles player, I become more aggressive. And to become a better doubles player, I become more aggressive. So again, talking about poaching a ton, poaching on a lot of first serves and trying different formations, things like that. I've even, been returning more aggressively lately. So it's been definitely a key to my success. And I want the same for you all. So definitely want you to be more aggressive with doubles game. And, don't be discouraged, obviously, if you try to be aggressive and you miss a volley. I mean, just know that it's the right play. It's all about making the right plays. The execution depends on the day. Some days you're going to execute well. Other days you're not going to execute as well. But you have to remember, the insane stat, seemingly insane, where the number one player in the world is winning something like 54% of the total points they play. Something like that, 54, 55, certainly in that, mid 50s range. And that's, when you think of like Djokovic or Nadal or Federer, you wouldn't think that they would only be winning that percentage of points and losing, almost half of the other points. But that just, kind of goes to show where you shouldn't be discouraged if you are missing here and there, especially if you're trying something new. So I would definitely invest in yourself and your game in the short term, if it means, a little bit of short term pain and errors and losses even for the long term success and gain. So, yep, I really hope you enjoyed this one. I'll just recap the 7 doubles tells. Number 1 is, the signals given between the server and the net partner, and the patterns that they use there. And then also variations in the verbal replies from the server when the net player gives the server signals. Number 3 is when your partner is able to hit a T serve on the deuce side, you should poach. Number 4 is backhand slices. When you see that, you should usually poach. Number 5 is if a player is leaning back off a deep ground stroke, then you want to poach. Number 6 is the serve positioning of your opponents. If they're changing their positioning depending on their serve, then you're likely going to know where they're serving. Wide means wide, closer to the T means T. And number 7 is the I formation tell of knowing that more often than not, the server is going to want their stronger ground stroke side if they have one. So you're going to know that the net player is going to go to the weaker side of the server's ground stroke area. So with that, really hope that you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, and if you got value from it, from this solo episode, which I do more rarely than the interviews, then I'd really appreciate it if you would leave a review for the Tennis Files podcast. And you can do that by going to your favorite podcast app of choice that you use to listen to the show. Also want to leave you with a quote, as I often do at the end of each episode. And I'm trying to find the quote right now. Oh, here it is. This one is by Joe Gibbs. He used to coach my Washington Commanders team. Had a previous name, obviously, before a couple of previous names. And Joe said, failures are expected by losers, ignored by winners. That's a really fantastic quote. Got some likes on that. And again, I know I asked about the reviews, and I think I forgot to mention that, Apple Podcasts would be the best place to do that. If you can go to tennisfiles.com/Apple Podcasts with an S at the end. To do that, it would be much appreciated. But of course, any platform would be great too. I think we have something like 150 reviews or so. Ratings or reviews, I forget. But yeah, it's been really helpful for me. So with that, thanks so much for listening. Looking forward to bringing you more episodes that are valuable to you and help improve your tennis game. And also, if you haven't yet, go to tennisfiles.com/YouTube to check out a 5-0 women's doubles match from recent sectionals, a super tri-level sectionals tournament that I went to. And what I did was I recorded this sectionals match and also provided commentary. I actually originally wanted to live stream it, but wasn't able to because of the slow internet at the facility, which, it's common. So no worries there for them. But yeah, so I recorded and commentated and then uploaded it a few days later. So I hope you find some enjoyment and value from that. But with that, I will see you on the next episode of the podcast. Take care and have a good one. Keep improving your tennis game.